The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the remote outpost in eastern Afghanistan, where Alpha Company had established a temporary forward operating base. The compound consisted of hastily erected concrete barriers, sandbags, and a collection of weathered tents that housed nearly 200 soldiers from various military branches. Among them was Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed, a Navy SEAL sniper whose reputation preceded him wherever he went. His cold blue eyes had seen more combat than most soldiers twice his age, and his steady hands had never missed a critical shot. The base buzzed with controlled chaos as personnel prepared for what intelligence suggested would be a significant Taliban offensive in the region. Radio chatter crackled constantly through the communications tent, while supply trucks rumbled in and out of the compound, kicking up clouds of fine dust that settled on everything and everyone. In the medical tent, Captain Sarah Chun worked tirelessly to organize the field hospital. As one of only 3 female officers at the remote outpost, she had grown accustomed to the occasional stare or inappropriate comment, but she handled such situations with the professionalism that had earned her respect throughout her military career. Her surgical skills had saved countless lives during her 2 previous deployments, and she approached each day with unwavering dedication to her patients and her mission. The tension between different military branches was nothing new at joint operations bases, but Alpha Company seemed particularly volatile. Gunnery Sergeant William Bull Morrison, a career Marine with 20 years of service, commanded respect through intimidation and volume rather than leadership. His weathered face bore scars from multiple deployments, and his explosive temper had earned him both fear and resentment from the men under his command. Morrison had made it clear from day one that he considered the Navy personnel, particularly the SEALs, to be glory-seeking prima donnas who had no business operating alongside real Marines. His animosity toward Reed was particularly intense, stemming from a previous mission where Reed's sniper skills had prevented Morrison's squad from what the Marine considered a righteous engagement with enemy forces. The cultural divide extended beyond mere inter-service rivalry. Morrison's old-school mentality clashed with the modern military's efforts toward inclusion and equality. He made no attempt to hide his belief that women had no place in combat zones, despite regulations and changing attitudes throughout the military hierarchy. Reed observed these dynamics with the calculated patience of a professional sniper. He had worked with all types of military personnel throughout his career and understood that personality conflicts could prove fatal in combat situations. His primary concern remained mission success and the safety of all personnel, regardless of their branch of service or gender. The outpost's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel James Patterson, struggled to maintain unit cohesion while preparing for the anticipated enemy assault. Intelligence reports suggested that a large Taliban force was massing in the surrounding mountains, potentially planning a coordinated attack on multiple coalition positions throughout the region. Patterson called for a briefing in the main command tent as the afternoon heat reached its peak. Representatives from each military branch gathered around a large table covered with maps, satellite imagery, and intelligence reports. The air inside the tent hung thick with tension and the lingering smell of diesel fuel from the nearby generator. Reed positioned himself near the back of the tent, his keen eyes scanning the faces of his fellow soldiers while listening intently to the intelligence officer's presentation. The enemy force was larger than initially estimated, with sophisticated weapons and tactical coordination that suggested significant planning and outside support. Morrison interrupted the briefing several times with aggressive questions about rules of engagement and tactical deployment. His confrontational tone created visible tension among the assembled officers, particularly when he questioned the involvement of support personnel in defensive preparations. Captain Chun had been assigned to brief the medical evacuation procedures, her clear and concise presentation demonstrating her thorough preparation and professional competence. As she concluded her remarks, Morrison stood abruptly and addressed the commanding officer directly. "Sir, with all due respect, I don't think non-combat personnel should be involved in tactical planning," Morrison declared loudly, his eyes fixed on Chun. "This is a combat operation, not a training exercise." The tent fell silent as every eye turned toward the Marine sergeant. Chun maintained her composure, her hands steady on the medical evacuation charts she had been presenting. Reed watched the exchange carefully, noting the subtle shift in Morrison's posture that suggested escalating aggression. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's voice carried authority as he responded firmly. "Sergeant Morrison, Captain Chin's medical expertise is essential to our mission success. I suggest you focus on your own responsibilities." Morrison's face flushed red with anger, but he remained standing at attention. The tension in the tent was palpable as other officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Reed recognized the warning signs of a man whose anger was building toward an explosive release. The briefing concluded without further incident, but the underlying tensions remained unresolved. As personnel filed out of the command tent, Reed noticed Morrison's hostile glare following Chun as she gathered her medical evacuation plans and headed toward the door. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains, the base settled into its nighttime defensive posture. Guard rotations were established, perimeter defenses were checked and rechecked, and soldiers prepared for what could be a long night of waiting and watching. Reed climbed to his designated sniper position atop a reinforced concrete tower that provided excellent visibility of the surrounding terrain. His customized rifle was meticulously cleaned and perfectly calibrated, ready for any engagement that might develop during the night. Through his scope, he could see for miles across the desert landscape, noting potential approach routes and defensive positions. The communications equipment crackled with routine radio checks and situation reports from various positions around the perimeter. Reed maintained radio contact with the command post while scanning the horizon for any signs of enemy movement. Below in the compound, soldiers went about their evening routines with the practiced efficiency of experienced combat veterans. Some cleaned weapons, others wrote letters home, and a few gathered around portable radios to listen to music or news broadcasts from home. Captain Chun worked late in the medical tent, reviewing patient files and updating medical supply inventories. Her dedication to preparedness was absolute, knowing that when casualties arrived, there would be no time for equipment checks or supply shortages. Morrison conducted his final inspection of Marine positions with his usual aggressive demeanor, shouting orders and criticisms that echoed across the compound. His leadership style created resentment among his own men, but years of military conditioning ensured compliance with his commands. As the night deepened, Reed noticed increased radio traffic from intelligence sources monitoring enemy movements in the surrounding area. Reconnaissance drones reported thermal signatures suggesting significant troop movements approximately 10 kilometers to the east. The base went to heightened alert status, with additional sentries posted and all personnel notified to remain ready for potential combat engagement. Reed adjusted his position and checked his equipment once more, knowing that the coming hours could bring intense fighting. Through his night vision scope, Reed observed the subtle changes in the compound below as soldiers prepared for potential contact. Weapons were loaded, defensive positions were manned, and the atmosphere shifted from routine vigilance to combat readiness. Morrison's voice carried across the compound as he screamed orders at his Marines, his stress manifesting as increased aggression toward his subordinates. Reed noted the sergeant's erratic behavior and made a mental note to monitor the situation closely. The night air carried the distant sound of helicopter rotors as air support assets moved into position throughout the region. Coalition forces were coordinating a comprehensive defensive strategy to counter the anticipated enemy offensive. Reed's radio crackled with an update from the command post reporting confirmed enemy contact at a coalition base 30 kilometers to the south. The Taliban offensive had begun, and their own base would likely face attack within hours. As Reed settled into position for what promised to be a long night of combat, he reflected on the complex dynamics within their own forces. Enemy bullets were dangerous enough without the added complications of internal conflicts and personality clashes among supposed allies. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only their military skills, but also their ability to function as a cohesive unit despite their differences. Reed understood that survival would depend on professional cooperation and mutual support, regardless of personal animosities or branch rivalries. The desert wind carried the scent of distant smoke, suggesting that the enemy offensive was already underway at other locations. Reed's trained eyes continued scanning the horizon while his mind prepared for the challenges that would soon test every soldier in the compound. In the medical tent below, Captain Shun made final preparations for the casualties that would inevitably result from the coming battle. Her professional focus remained absolute, despite the hostile environment created by Morrison's aggressive behavior toward anyone he deemed unworthy of respect. The night would bring violence, courage, and decisions that would define the character of every person in the compound. Reed checked his rifle one final time and settled into the patient waiting that defined a sniper's existence, ready to protect his fellow soldiers regardless of their branch of service or personal conflicts. The first mortar rounds struck the compound at 0347 hours, their explosive impacts shaking the ground and sending shockwaves through every building and tent in the base. Reed felt the vibrations through the concrete tower as dirt and debris rained down from the sky. The enemy had found their range quickly, suggesting sophisticated targeting and coordination. Immediately, the base erupted into controlled chaos as soldiers rushed to defensive positions while incoming rounds continued to fall with increasing accuracy. Reed's scope swept across the eastern ridgeline, where muzzle flashes revealed enemy positions approximately 800 meters away. His first shot silenced a mortar team before they could fire another round. The command post radio crackled with reports from various defensive positions as soldiers called out enemy sightings and requested fire support. Reed's elevated position provided excellent visibility of the developing battle, and his rifle spoke again as another enemy fighter fell to his precisely aimed shot. Morrison's voice boomed across the compound as he screamed orders at his Marines, directing them to reinforced positions along the eastern perimeter. His aggressive leadership style seemed well suited to the chaos of combat, and his men responded with disciplined fire that helped repel the initial enemy assault. Captain Shun had immediately activated the medical station's emergency protocols, converting the tent into a fully operational trauma center. The first casualties arrived within minutes of the initial attack, carried by fellow soldiers who had braved enemy fire to rescue wounded comrades. Reed continued engaging enemy targets with methodical precision, each shot carefully aimed and perfectly executed. Through his scope, he could see enemy fighters attempting to advance under cover of darkness, but his night vision capabilities gave coalition forces a significant advantage in the firefight. The battle intensified as enemy reinforcements arrived on the ridgeline, bringing heavier weapons and more sophisticated tactics. Reed noted the professional manner in which the enemy forces maneuvered, suggesting well-trained fighters rather than the poorly organized militants they had expected. Morrison led a counterattack against an enemy position that threatened to flank the main defensive line. His Marines followed him across dangerous ground, their assault rifles chattering as they advanced under Reed's covering fire. The SEAL sniper eliminated 3 enemy fighters who attempted to ambush Morrison's squad from concealed positions. In the medical tent, Captain Shun worked frantically to stabilize seriously wounded soldiers while coordinating medical evacuation requests with air support units. Her surgical skills were tested to their limits as casualties arrived faster than she could treat them. Reed's radio buzzed with a priority message from the command post requesting immediate sniper support for a critical defensive position on the southern perimeter. Enemy forces had breached the outer wire and threatened to overrun a machine gun nest that anchored the entire defensive line. Without hesitation, Reed shifted his position and acquired targets in the southern sector. His rifle barked repeatedly as enemy fighters fell one by one, their assault broken by accurate sniper fire that eliminated key leaders and heavy weapons operators. The battle raged for over 2 hours before enemy forces began withdrawing to positions in the distant mountains. Reed had fired 47 rounds and confirmed 39 kills, his accuracy rate maintaining the deadly precision that had made him one of the Navy's most effective snipers. As the immediate threat subsided, soldiers began the grim task of caring for wounded comrades and assessing damage to the compound. Morrison's Marines had performed excellently during the firefight, their aggressive tactics preventing enemy forces from breaching the main defensive perimeter. Captain Shun continued working on casualties in the medical tent, her uniform stained with blood as she fought to save every wounded soldier brought to her station. Her professionalism under extreme pressure had undoubtedly saved multiple lives during the chaotic battle. Reed maintained his overwatch position as dawn approached, knowing that enemy forces often launched secondary attacks after apparent withdrawals. His scope continued scanning the surrounding terrain for any signs of continued enemy presence or movement. The base communications officer reported that coalition forces throughout the region had successfully repelled coordinated Taliban attacks, suggesting that their outpost had been part of a larger offensive strategy that had ultimately failed. As sunlight began illuminating the battlefield, the full extent of the night's violence became visible. Enemy bodies lay scattered across the approaches to the compound, while coalition casualties were being evacuated to larger medical facilities with better surgical capabilities. Morrison conducted a head count of his Marines and was relieved to find that none had been killed, though several had sustained wounds requiring medical attention. His aggressive leadership during the firefight had kept his men focused and effective throughout the engagement. Reed climbed down from his sniper position as the threat level decreased, and normal defensive postures were re-established. His rifle had performed flawlessly throughout the battle, and he began the careful cleaning and maintenance procedures that ensured continued reliability. Captain Chun emerged from the medical tent looking exhausted, but satisfied that she had done everything possible for the wounded soldiers under her care. Her efforts had stabilized 7 seriously wounded soldiers for medical evacuation to facilities with more advanced surgical capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson called for an after-action briefing to review the night's events and identify lessons learned from the engagement. The successful defense demonstrated excellent coordination between different military branches despite previous tensions and personality conflicts. Reed's sniper effectiveness had been crucial to the defensive success, his accurate fire disrupting enemy attacks and protecting vulnerable defensive positions throughout the compound. His professional competence had earned respect from soldiers in all military branches present at the outpost. Morrison's aggressive tactics had proven effective in combat, his Marines responding well to his demanding leadership style when lives were at stake. The stress of combat had channeled his natural aggression into productive military action rather than interpersonal conflict. As the morning progressed, resupply helicopters arrived to deliver ammunition, medical supplies, and replacement equipment damaged during the enemy bombardment. The efficient coordination of logistics demonstrated the military's ability to support remote outposts under combat conditions. Reed took the opportunity to resupply his sniper ammunition and conduct detailed maintenance on his rifle and optical equipment. His meticulous attention to equipment care was essential for maintaining the accuracy required for effective sniper operations. The base settled into a routine of repair, resupply, and preparation for potential future attacks while intelligence analysts assessed enemy capabilities and likely future actions. The successful defense would undoubtedly prompt enemy forces to develop new tactics and strategies. Morrison supervised his Marines as they reinforced defensive positions and improved fields of fire based on lessons learned during the night battle. His practical experience in combat engineering helped strengthen the compound's ability to withstand future attacks. Captain Chun used the relative calm to reorganize her medical supplies and prepare for potential mass casualty situations that might result from future enemy actions. Her methodical approach to medical logistics had proven essential during the previous night's emergency medical operations. As afternoon approached, intelligence reports began arriving that suggested enemy forces were regrouping in mountain strongholds beyond the range of coalition artillery. The threat remained significant, and all personnel maintained heightened readiness for potential renewed attacks. Reed returned to his sniper position with fresh ammunition and newly cleaned equipment, ready to resume his protective overwatch of the compound and surrounding terrain. His professional dedication to the mission never wavered regardless of personal relationships or interpersonal conflicts within the unit. The successful defense had proven that professional military training could overcome personality differences when lives were at stake. Soldiers from different branches had worked together effectively despite previous tensions and conflicting leadership styles. Morrison's respect for Reed's sniper skills had grown considerably after witnessing the SEAL's effectiveness in protecting Marine positions during critical moments of the battle. Professional competence earned recognition even from those predisposed to inter-service rivalry. Captain Shen's medical skills had earned universal respect from all soldiers who witnessed her tireless efforts to save wounded comrades regardless of their military branch or previous attitudes toward her presence in the combat zone. As evening approached once again, the base prepared for another potential night of combat, while hoping that enemy forces had been sufficiently damaged to prevent immediate renewed attacks. The cycle of vigilance and preparation continued as it had for countless military units throughout history. Reed settled into his night vision-equipped overwatch position, ready to protect his fellow soldiers through another long night of watching and waiting. His dedication to the mission and his comrades remained absolute despite the complex interpersonal dynamics that continued to simmer beneath the surface of military discipline and professionalism. 3 days passed in relative quiet after the initial attack, with only sporadic sniper fire from distant enemy positions testing the alertness of coalition sentries. Reed had eliminated 2 enemy snipers during this period, their bodies visible through his scope as grim reminders of the deadly game being played across the desert landscape. The temporary calm allowed for much-needed repairs to defensive positions and equipment damage during the firefight. Morrison supervised his Marines as they reinforced weak points in the perimeter and improved firing positions based on lessons learned from the enemy assault. Captain Chun had successfully treated and evacuated all seriously wounded soldiers, her medical tent now serving its normal function of routine healthcare and preventive medicine. Her professional reputation had been enhanced by her performance under combat conditions, earning respect from soldiers who had previously questioned her presence in the combat zone. Reed maintained his overwatch position with disciplined patience, understanding that enemy forces often allowed time for coalition forces to relax their vigilance before launching renewed attacks. His scope continued scanning potential approach routes while monitoring radio traffic for intelligence updates about enemy activities. The base routine had settled into the rhythm of sustained combat operations, with regular patrol schedules, supply convoys, and intelligence-gathering missions. Soldiers adapted to the heightened threat level while maintaining the daily activities necessary for extended military operations in hostile territory. Morrison's attitude toward Reed had evolved from hostility to grudging respect based on the sniper's demonstrated effectiveness in protecting Marine positions. Professional competence had begun to overcome inter-service prejudice, though underlying tensions remained just beneath the surface. Intelligence reports suggested that enemy forces were receiving reinforcements and supplies from across the border, indicating that future attacks would likely be larger and more sophisticated than the initial assault. Coalition commanders were developing strategies to counter these enhanced enemy capabilities. Reed's sniper log recorded detailed observations of enemy movement patterns, weapon positions, and tactical behaviors that would help intelligence analysts understand enemy capabilities and intentions. His professional documentation provided valuable information for planning future defensive and offensive operations. The medical supplies had been replenished by resupply helicopters, allowing Captain Chun to maintain full emergency response capabilities while continuing routine medical care for soldiers dealing with the stress and minor injuries common to extended combat operations. Morrison conducted aggressive patrol operations beyond the perimeter wire, leading his Marines in reconnaissance missions designed to locate enemy observation posts and supply routes. These dangerous missions provided valuable intelligence while demonstrating coalition willingness to take offensive action. Reed provided overwatch support for these patrol operations, his sniper rifle ready to eliminate enemy fighters who threatened Marine patrols operating in exposed terrain. His protective fire had already saved several Marines from enemy ambushes during the previous day's reconnaissance mission. The compound's defensive improvements included better camouflage for key positions, improved fields of fire, and enhanced communication systems linking all defensive positions with the central command post. These upgrades would significantly improve their ability to coordinate defensive fires during future attacks. Captain Chun had established protocols for rapid medical response to casualties occurring during patrol operations. Her emergency medical procedures designed to stabilize wounded soldiers for evacuation to the base medical facility or larger hospitals when necessary. As the 4th day dawned clear and hot, Intelligence reports indicated significant enemy movement in the mountains surrounding the coalition outpost. Reed noted increased radio traffic suggesting that a major enemy operation was being planned for the coming night. Morrison received orders to conduct a reconnaissance and force mission to develop intelligence about enemy positions and intentions. His Marines would advance several kilometers from the base to locate and engage enemy reconnaissance teams that had been observing coalition activities. Reed was assigned to provide sniper overwatch for the mission, his elevated position allowing him to protect Morrison's Marines while they operated in dangerous terrain beyond the reach of base defensive fires. The mission would test the cooperation between SEAL and Marine units that had developed during recent combat operations. Captain Chun prepared her medical team for potential mass casualty situations, knowing that aggressive patrol operations often resulted in significant friendly casualties when enemy forces were present in large numbers. Her trauma surgery capabilities would be essential if the mission encountered serious enemy resistance. The patrol departed the compound at mid-morning, with Morrison leading 20 Marines in an extended reconnaissance mission designed to locate enemy observation posts and supply routes. Reed maintained radio contact while tracking their movement through his rifle scope. Enemy contact occurred sooner than expected when Morrison's lead element triggered an improvised explosive device approximately 2 kilometers from the base. The explosion wounded 2 Marines and alerted enemy forces throughout the area to the patrol's presence and location. Reed immediately began engaging enemy fighters who attempted to ambush the patrol from concealed positions on surrounding ridgelines. His accurate fire eliminated several enemy fighters before they could effectively engage the Marines with rocket-propelled grenades and automatic weapons. Morrison's aggressive response to the ambush demonstrated his combat leadership abilities as he maneuvered his Marines to advantageous positions while calling for artillery support from the base fire support center. His tactical decisions under pressure showed why he had survived 20 years of military service. The firefight intensified as enemy reinforcements arrived, bringing heavy weapons and coordinated tactics that suggested professional military training rather than typical insurgent capabilities. Reed's sniper fire proved crucial in breaking up enemy assault formations before they could overwhelm Morrison's Marines. Captain Chun monitored the radio traffic from the medical tent. Her trauma team prepared to receive casualties as soon as the patrol could break contact and return to the base. Her emergency medical protocols had been activated immediately upon receiving the first casualty report. Reed eliminated an enemy machine gun team that threatened to pin down Morrison's Marines in exposed terrain, his precisely aimed shots silencing the crew before they could bring effective fire on the patrol. The SEAL's protective overwatch was proving essential to the Marines' survival. Morrison led his Marines in a fighting withdrawal toward the base, using terrain features and Reed's sniper fire to protect his wounded soldiers while maintaining contact with enemy forces. His tactical expertise was evident in the smooth execution of a complex combat maneuver under heavy fire. The patrol's return to the compound was covered by Reed's continued sniper fire, which prevented enemy forces from pursuing the Marines into the base defensive perimeter. His professional competence had undoubtedly prevented additional casualties during the dangerous withdrawal. Captain Chun immediately began treating the wounded Marines, her surgical skills stabilizing their injuries for potential medical evacuation to facilities with more advanced trauma capabilities. Her quick response and professional expertise were essential to saving lives. Morrison personally thanked Reed for the sniper support that had protected his Marines during the firefight, his gratitude representing a significant change in attitude toward the Navy SEAL. Professional respect was developing despite previous inter-service animosity. The successful completion of the reconnaissance mission provided valuable intelligence about enemy positions and capabilities while demonstrating improved cooperation between different military branches. The mission had achieved its objectives despite encountering significant enemy resistance. Reed's after-action report documented 14 confirmed enemy kills during the patrol support mission, his accuracy rate remaining consistently high under combat conditions. His professional effectiveness continued to earn respect from soldiers in all military branches. As evening approached, Intelligence analysts processed information gathered during the reconnaissance mission to develop a comprehensive picture of enemy capabilities and likely future actions. The intelligence would help coalition commanders plan effective responses to anticipated enemy offensives. Morrison supervised defensive preparations for another potential night attack, his Marines implementing improved tactics based on lessons learned from recent combat operations. His aggressive leadership style was proving effective in preparing soldiers for continued combat operations. Captain Chun maintained her medical readiness while monitoring intelligence reports that suggested the possibility of significant casualties during anticipated enemy actions. Her trauma surgery capabilities would be tested once again as enemy forces prepared for renewed attacks on coalition positions. Reed returned to his overwatch position with full ammunition and perfectly maintained equipment, ready to provide protective fire for the compound throughout another long night of vigilance and potential combat. His dedication to mission success and soldier safety remained absolute regardless of personal relationships or inter-service rivalries that continued to influence unit dynamics. The intelligence reports proved accurate as enemy forces launched their most coordinated attack, yet during the pre-dawn hours of the fifth day. Reed counted at least 60 muzzle flashes from positions surrounding the compound, indicating a force nearly 3 times larger than the initial assault. His rifle began its deadly work immediately, targeting enemy heavy weapons crews and leadership figures directing the complex attack. Morrison's Marines responded with disciplined fire from improved defensive positions, their weeks of preparation evident in the coordinated defensive fires that met the enemy assault. The sergeant's aggressive leadership kept his men focused despite the intensity of incoming rocket-propelled grenades and mortar rounds. Captain Chun had positioned additional medical personnel throughout the compound to provide immediate trauma care at the point of injury, her innovative approach to battlefield medicine reducing the time between wounding and initial treatment. Her preparations proved essential as casualties began arriving within minutes of the attack's initiation. Reed's elevated position allowed him to observe enemy tactics that revealed sophisticated planning and coordination far beyond typical insurgent capabilities. Professional military advisors were clearly directing the assault, their influence evident in the timing and execution of coordinated attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. The enemy had learned from their previous failed assault, bringing larger weapons and attempting to overwhelm specific sections of the defensive perimeter through concentrated firepower. Reed's scope identified enemy commanders directing these focused attacks, and his rifle eliminated 3 key leaders within the first 30 minutes of fighting. Morrison led a counterattack against an enemy penetration on the eastern perimeter, his Marines advancing under heavy fire to restore the defensive line. Reed's covering fire cleared enemy positions that threatened the Marine assault, his precisely aimed shots allowing Morrison's men to advance across dangerous ground. The medical tent became a scene of controlled chaos as Captain Chun and her team worked frantically to stabilize multiple seriously wounded soldiers. Her surgical skills were tested to their absolute limits as trauma cases arrived faster than could be properly treated with available resources and personnel. Reed noticed that enemy forces were attempting to coordinate their assault with accurate mortar fire directed at specific defensive positions. His radio call to the command post resulted in counter-battery fire that silenced several enemy mortar positions, but not before significant damage had been inflicted on coalition defensive structures. Morrison's voice could be heard across the compound as he directed Marine fire teams to critical defensive positions, his combat experience evident in tactical decisions that maximized defensive effectiveness while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. His leadership under extreme pressure was proving invaluable to the successful defense. The intensity of enemy fire forced Captain Chun to move her medical operations to a more protected location within the compound, her team continuing to treat casualties while enemy rounds impacted dangerously close to the medical facility. Her dedication to treating wounded soldiers never wavered despite personal danger. Reed's ammunition consumption was higher than normal due to the target-rich environment presented by the large enemy force, but his accuracy remained consistently lethal as enemy fighters fell to his precisely aimed shots. His sniper log would later record 63 confirmed kills during the extended firefight. The battle reached a critical point when enemy forces succeeded in breaching the southern defensive perimeter despite heavy casualties inflicted by coalition defensive fires. Morrison immediately organized a response force to contain the penetration while Reed shifted his fire to support the critical defensive action. Captain Chun found herself treating wounded soldiers while enemy fighters operated within the compound itself, her medical team maintaining their life-saving mission despite bullets passing overhead, and the immediate proximity of armed combat throughout the base. Reed eliminated several enemy fighters who had penetrated the defensive perimeter, his rifle fire clearing threats from Captain Chin's medical area while maintaining overwatch of the broader tactical situation. His protective fire allowed the medical team to continue their essential mission without interruption. Morrison led his response force in a vicious close-quarters battle to eliminate enemy fighters who had breached the perimeter, his aggressive tactics and personal courage inspiring his Marines to fight with exceptional determination and effectiveness. Hand-to-hand combat occurred in several locations as Marines fought to restore defensive integrity. The medical casualties mounted rapidly as the intensity of fighting increased, with Captain Chun and her team treating everything from minor shrapnel wounds to life-threatening trauma requiring immediate surgical intervention. Her emergency surgery capabilities were stretched beyond normal limits as she fought to save every wounded soldier. Reed's position came under direct enemy fire as enemy marksmen attempted to eliminate the deadly sniper who had inflicted such heavy casualties on their assault force. His concrete shelter protected him from most incoming rounds, but several near misses demonstrated the accuracy of enemy return fire. Morrison's leadership during the perimeter breach response demonstrated why career Marines respected his aggressive approach to combat leadership, his personal example inspiring his men to fight with determination that ultimately restored defensive integrity despite overwhelming enemy numerical superiority. As the battle continued into its fourth hour, Reed noticed that enemy fire was becoming less coordinated and effective, suggesting that his elimination of key leadership figures was disrupting enemy command and control capabilities. The assault was losing momentum despite continued numerical superiority. Captain Chun made the difficult decision to prioritize treatment based on survival probability, her medical training forcing her to allocate limited resources to soldiers with the best chances of survival. These battlefield medical decisions required professional judgment that went beyond normal civilian medical ethics. The compound's defensive fires reached maximum intensity as every available weapon engaged enemy forces attempting to exploit gaps created by their earlier penetration. Reed's sniper fire continued targeting enemy heavy weapons that posed the greatest threat to coalition defensive positions. Morrison organized a final counterattack to drive remaining enemy forces from the compound entirely, his Marines advancing with fixed bayonets in a desperate assault that would either restore complete defensive control or result in catastrophic failure for the coalition force. Reed provided critical covering fire for Morrison's assault, his rifle eliminating enemy fighters who attempted to ambush the advancing Marines from concealed positions throughout the compound. The coordination between SEAL sniper and Marine assault troops demonstrated professional military effectiveness despite previous interpersonal conflicts. The enemy withdrawal began suddenly, as remaining fighters realized their assault had failed despite achieving temporary penetration of coalition defenses. Reed continued engaging retreating enemy forces until they moved beyond effective rifle range, his final shots eliminating fighters attempting to recover wounded comrades and equipment. Captain Chun continued treating wounded soldiers as the immediate tactical threat subsided, her medical team working throughout the morning to stabilize casualties for medical evacuation to facilities with more advanced surgical capabilities. Her professional competence had undoubtedly saved multiple lives during the chaotic battle. Morrison conducted immediate damage assessment and reorganization of defensive positions while coordinating medical evacuation requests for seriously wounded Marines under his command. His leadership during the extended firefight had prevented enemy forces from achieving their objective of overrunning the coalition outpost. The aftermath of the battle revealed the scale of enemy casualties inflicted by effective coalition defensive fires, with over 40 enemy bodies visible in the immediate vicinity of the compound perimeter. Reed's sniper effectiveness had been particularly devastating to enemy leadership and heavy weapons crews. Intelligence analysis of captured enemy equipment and documents revealed sophisticated planning and outside support that confirmed suspicions about professional military advisors directing insurgent operations. The information would prove valuable for planning future coalition operations throughout the region. As medical evacuation helicopters arrived to transport seriously wounded soldiers to advanced medical facilities, Captain Shin supervised the careful loading of patients whose lives depended on continued professional medical care beyond her field hospital capabilities. Reed maintained overwatch throughout the evacuation process, his rifle ready to engage any enemy forces that might attempt to interfere with medical evacuation operations. His protective vigilance ensured that wounded soldiers could be safely evacuated without additional casualties. Morrison's after-action report would document the exceptional performance of his Marines during the most intense combat operations of their deployment, his aggressive leadership having proven effective in maintaining unit cohesion and fighting effectiveness throughout the extended battle. The successful defense against overwhelming enemy forces demonstrated that professional military training and leadership could overcome significant odds when combined with individual courage and unit cohesion. Personal conflicts and inter-service rivalries had been set aside when lives were at stake. Reed's sniper effectiveness during the battle would become part of military legend, his accurate fire having disrupted enemy assault formations and eliminated key leadership figures at critical moments during the fighting. His professional competence had earned universal respect regardless of previous interpersonal tensions. Captain Chen's medical performance under extreme combat conditions would serve as a model for battlefield trauma care, her innovative approaches to emergency surgery and resource allocation having maximized the survival rate among seriously wounded soldiers despite overwhelming medical challenges. As the base settled into recovery operations and preparation for potential future attacks, the bonds forged during intense combat had fundamentally changed relationships between soldiers who had previously allowed personal conflicts to interfere with professional cooperation and mutual respect.